Hi, everyone. I'm with Brock Blake, the founder and CEO of Lendio, an online business loan marketplace. Brock, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Ezra. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So, my first question for you is, how long does it take for a Paycheck Protection Loan application to get reviewed and either rejected or approved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the application process is actually quite simple. Business owners can kind of go through the application in about 15 minutes as long as they have all the proper documentation, which includes front and back driver's license, passport, includes your payroll documentation. Ideally, that'd be a quarterly tax filing. And then you go through the full kind of PPP application like we have online or others that you can submit through the bank. Once you get the full application, the only lenders that are approved for the PPP loans today are SBA licensed lenders. And so really it's going to vary depending on which lender you go with. And not every bank that you work with is an SBA licensed lender, although a lot of people think that's the case. Some lenders are high volume, non-bank SBA lenders that can do a lot of transactions. Others are small community banks and they've never done a PPP loan before. They're getting it set up. No one's ever done a PPP loan. But I'm saying they've never done an SBA loan. So they're setting up systems and processes and E-Tran and all these different things. And it could, some of these are still, I had a call this morning with a bank president who's not going to be up and running to take any applications until next week, even if you submit it to a loan officer. So it varies by lender. Let me just walk you through the process. So kind of in the markets, then they need to go submit the application to the SBA through what's called E-Tran. It's an SBA portal. I know that the speed of E-Tran is not the fastest technology in the world. So many banks have been frustrated with that process. But once they submit it to the SBA, then the SBA gives them back what's called a PLP number or a confirmation number that essentially says you're approved. And then that business owner can't go and apply through a different other lender. And if they did, then that PLP number you wouldn't get a confirmation, so it would decline. Once you get that PLP number, then it's back in the bank's hands. So the bank needs to be able to, they have confirmation from the SBA. Now they need to work on all the closing docs. So there's a promissory note. There's another agreement, and some of those lenders are, again, they're starting from scratch. The SBA didn't guide them with, here's the exact closing docs you need to use. And so the first loan takes the longest. Then once you fund one, then it will speed up. Once the bank gets a PLP number, they have 10 days from the PLP number to a deadline of 10 days in which they have to fund the deal. Hopefully it happens faster than that. Some of our banks are moving quite rapidly and they're funding deals. Others are a little bit slower in their systems and processes and stuff like that. So anyways, that's a long answer, probably more than you wanted to hear, but wanted to explain the entire process of actually getting a PPP loan.
So sort of the range, if you can give us a range, what would it be, like as a short sum?
So short, I would say 3 days, 3 business days. Long is going to be probably like that 13 business days.
And once a borrower is approved, how long will it generally take for them to receive their loan funds?
Once they have their PLP number, most banks are moving fairly quickly from there in a matter of a couple of days. Here's the challenge that not too many people are talking about. Let me just throw this in there. As I mentioned, only SBA lenders are licensed to be able to fund these loans. And so you might have banked with a bank for 20 years and realizing today that they're not an SBA lender. That wasn't part of your criteria in selecting the bank, 10 or 20 years ago. And so you go to your own bank to apply for a loan. They're not approved to fund these loans. And they're saying, well, you go to someone else, that's approved. So you go to another bank that is approved, and what you realize is that since there's only a few SBA banks approved, they are getting all of the volume in the US, and they're completely overwhelmed with applications that it's slowing down the process. So what they start doing is they start prioritizing. There's prioritizing based off of, I'm only going to fund customers that I already have a loan with, or maybe I only going to fund customers that I already have a relationship with, or that they're banking with me. And so that means if you don't bank with them, you're deprioritized and you're at a disadvantage, which actually is quite frustrating. I don't think that's the intent of the program. And business owners right now are getting put at the back of the line just because they were unlucky and unfortunate they just 10 years ago selected a bank that wasn't an SBA lender. That's my biggest concern right now is as of yesterday, there were only about 1.5% of there was 440,000 businesses that had been funded. And that sounds like a huge number, but there are 30 million businesses in America. So that's 1.5% of all businesses have actually got a loan. 99% are sitting on the sidelines right now on the outside looking in, trying to say, when am I going to get my loan?
Right. And what do you think about Congress and the SBA's plan to sort of extend this loan to be available through non-SBA lenders?
Yeah, they're doing and saying all the right things. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of, the speed. So right now, that's what's happening. They non-bank SBA lenders or non-SBA lenders, banks and credit unions and fintechs now have an application to submit to the SBA and Treasury. None of them have been approved yet. We hope that happens any day.
And what if are there any lenders in your network that are taking measures at all to speed up turnaround time for people applying for this new loan?
Yeah, every lender is. Their goal is to process as many of these applications as they can. So many of the lenders are fighting for them to process the loans. Many lenders are trying to set up a DocuSign process to get the signatures more efficiently. But community banks aren't set up to do high volume transactions. That's just not their superpower. Their superpower is helping small businesses, do large transactions. They do, a few loans a month. And now they're being asked to do, 500, 1,000, 5,000 loans. And that's just, they don't have the systems, the processes, the tools, the people in place to do that.
Can you give a few specific examples of lenders that are trying to speed up funding time for their customers that are applying?
Yeah, we have over 300 financial institutions that are participating in this program. A lot of banks and credit unions. People's Bank of Alabama, I know, has been funding a bunch of loans, but they're focused right now on their customers. I'd have to kind of pull up a list of all the different banks we have so I can give you. Wilson Bank and Trust is a bank in Oklahoma that's funding a bunch of deals. Ready Capital is funding loans. There's 200 of them. And those three are probably going to get bombarded by customers all of a sudden, because I mentioned their names, but there's quite a few. I would say, again, the intent is for most banks that we work with, they're trying to increase the speed of which they're processing these loans.
My next question is there any specific information or documentation that applicants can provide to especially boost their chances of getting approved? And likewise, what should they avoid doing on their application to prevent getting rejected?
Yeah, that's a great question. We put up some content on our site around what does a fully completed application look like? What does it need to have? And I think that's the most important thing is that when if it's your turn to be submitted to one of these banks and you don't have a fully completed app, you're missing. For example, you need to have driver's license front and back. You need to have the tax filings or the payroll reports, and if you don't, a payroll report, if you put in bank statements that validate that the payroll report matches your bank statements, that will help. Your tax returns. So the more documentation you have so that there's no question and there's a lot of comfort, that's going to help that banker when they're reviewing that file to be able to say, yep, this is good to go, let's process it. The last thing you want to have happen is that they get the file and they realize that you're missing something. You don't have a picture of the back of your driver's license, and they have to send it back, and now you're starting all over again. So everyone's anxious and wants to make this happen yesterday, but make sure you're thorough in your application process so that when you do get that opportunity, it will be fully approved.
My final question for you is, are borrowers able to apply for the PPP at a second lender while they're being pending approval for the first place they applied to? Like, for example, say I applied for the loan through one of the online lenders in your network, and I'm waiting over a week, I haven't heard back, and I'm still pending approval. Can I go to a bank that I have a relationship with and apply through there again while I'm waiting to hear back from the first place that I applied to?
Yep, you can apply for a loan in multiple places. Just know that you can't get two loans. And whoever processes that application first with the SBA will get that PLP number, will reserve that you basically need to fund through them. When the second lender, let's say you submit to two lenders, if the second lender goes and submits your file to the SBA, be rejected. So that, reason in a bad read, pursue multiple avenues if you have them. If you don't, Lendio, we're doing everything we can, so we're working with to accelerate the loan approval and funding process as much as possible.
All right, thank you so much, Brock. Thank you so much for being so thorough, and I think this is a great lot of information for our viewers who are very much need this loan right now.